The moment the woman I had spent 20 minutes complaining to about my new boss walked into the conference room and sat at the head of the table, every word I had said came crashing back into my mind like a wrecking ball. My coffee stopped halfway to my mouth. The room went silent. And when she looked directly at me, I knew with absolute certainty that my career was over. Just minutes earlier, I had told a complete stranger that my new boss sounded like the kind of person who could make an employee cry before lunch. I had described her as cold, ruthless, and probably incapable of understanding what ordinary people were going through. Then she smiled faintly and introduced herself as Vivian Carlisle, the woman who had just purchased our company. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps our family continue sharing stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary moments and discovering that one mistake does not have to define an entire life. My name is Everett Hayes, and at 35, I thought I understood how quickly life could change. I was wrong. I had worked for Belmont and Pierce, a mid-sized architectural supply company, for nearly 11 years. I wasn't wealthy, powerful, or particularly ambitious. I was a project coordinator who made sure orders arrived, clients received accurate information, and our installation teams had what they needed. I liked my work because I liked being useful. I liked solving problems quietly and leaving at the end of the day knowing I had made somebody else's job a little easier. Then our longtime owner retired. Within 2 weeks, rumors about the new ownership spread through the building. People whispered that the buyer was a woman named Vivian Carlisle, a private investor known for restructuring struggling companies. According to the rumors, she had closed entire departments at other businesses. She supposedly expected impossible results, fired people without warning, and cared more about spreadsheets than human beings. By the time Monday morning arrived, everyone had already decided she was our enemy. I tried not to listen. But that was before I learned my department was being reorganized. My younger brother, Graham, had recently moved in with me after losing his job, and I was helping support him while he tried to get back on his feet. My rent had increased, my savings were thin, and the possibility of losing my position frightened me more than I wanted to admit. I wasn't just worried about my career. I was worried about what would happen to everyone who depended on my paycheck. That morning, I arrived early and found an email announcing an all-staff meeting at 11. The subject line simply read, "Important Company Update." By 9:30, everyone was nervous. At 10, I escaped to a small cafe across the street because I needed air. I ordered coffee and sat near the window, staring at the rainless summer afternoon outside. A woman sitting at the next table accidentally dropped her spoon, and when she bent to retrieve it, I noticed she had an expression remarkably similar to mine, exhausted, distracted, and carrying more worry than she wanted anyone to see. We started talking casually. She asked whether I worked nearby. I told her yes. She asked if things were going well. That was my mistake. Maybe it was because she looked like someone who wouldn't judge me. Maybe it was because I hadn't slept well. Maybe I simply needed someone to listen. I told her about the new ownership. Then I told her what everyone had been saying. I described my new boss as a nightmare. I said she sounded like the sort of executive who believed employees were numbers. I said she probably had no idea what it was like to worry about rent, family, or whether a single mistake could destroy everything. I admitted that I was already angry at someone I had never met. The woman listened quietly. She didn't laugh at me. She didn't encourage me either. Instead, she asked why I thought my new boss was so terrible. I told her about the rumors. She asked whether I had ever met the woman. I admitted I hadn't. Then she asked whether I thought it was fair to judge someone based entirely on stories told by frightened employees. I became defensive. I told her that rumors usually came from somewhere. She nodded. Then she asked me what I would do if the rumors were wrong. I didn't have an answer. She smiled and said that maybe I should give the woman a chance before deciding who she was. I thanked her for the advice, finished my coffee, and headed back across the street. 5 minutes later, I walked into the conference room. Every chair was occupied. At the far end of the long table stood a projector displaying the company's financial reports. Senior managers sat along one side. Department heads sat along the other. I took a seat near the middle. Then the door opened. The same woman from the cafe walked in. She carried a slim folder under one arm. She looked around the room. Then she sat at the head of the table. My blood ran cold. She looked directly at me. For several unbearable seconds, neither of us moved. Then she calmly introduced herself. Vivian Carlisle. The new owner. The new CEO. My new boss. I wanted the floor to open beneath me. The meeting continued, but I barely heard a word. Vivian spoke about the company's financial condition, upcoming changes, and the challenges ahead. She never mentioned the cafe. When the meeting ended, employees began leaving in silence. I remained seated. I knew I had to apologize. I approached her office after the meeting and stood outside for several seconds before knocking. She invited me in. I admitted everything. I told her exactly what I had said and apologized without trying to excuse myself. I explained that I had been frightened, overwhelmed, and angry about rumors I hadn't verified. She listened. Then she asked me one question. Why had I been so afraid of losing my job? I told her about Graham. I told her about my mother's death years earlier, the debt she had left behind, and how I had spent most of my adult life trying to become the dependable person my family needed. I told her that losing my job wouldn't simply mean changing companies. It could mean losing the apartment, abandoning my brother, and admitting that I couldn't keep everything together. Vivian sat quietly for a moment. Then she told me something I didn't expect. She understood. Her father had built the company she had inherited from him. When he became ill, she had left a successful career to care for him. After his death, she discovered that the business was drowning in debt. She had spent the previous 3 years saving it. She had not bought our company because she enjoyed firing people. She had bought it because she had seen too many good businesses destroyed by executives who never bothered to understand the people working inside them. Then she admitted something else. She had deliberately gone to the cafe that morning because she wanted to hear what employees really thought of her before introducing herself. She said my comments had hurt. But they had also taught her something important. People were scared. And frightened employees don't need another frightening boss. They need clarity. That was the first unexpected turn. The second came 2 weeks later. Vivian announced a restructuring plan. Everyone expected layoffs. Instead, she froze executive bonuses, opened the company's financial books to department leaders, and created a temporary employee support fund for workers facing genuine financial emergencies. She also asked each department to identify one policy that made their jobs unnecessarily difficult. I was asked to lead the review. At first, I didn't trust her. Neither did anyone else. But slowly, things changed. Vivian began eating lunch in the employee cafeteria instead of the executive dining room. She learned people's names. She visited warehouses. She listened to complaints without immediately defending herself. She was still demanding. She still expected deadlines to be met. But she explained why. And that made all the difference. Months passed. The company improved. Then one afternoon, Graham called me with devastating news. He had been offered a job in another state. It was a good opportunity, but accepting it meant leaving behind the support system we had built together. I told him he should take it. He asked whether I would be okay. I said yes. But I wasn't. That same week, I made a serious mistake at work. A large client shipment was sent to the wrong construction site because I approved an outdated delivery document. The company stood to lose tens of thousands of dollars. I assumed I would be fired. When Vivian called me into her office, I prepared myself. She showed me the paperwork. Then she asked me what had happened. I told her. I didn't blame anyone else. I didn't hide the mistake. I accepted responsibility. She looked at me and reminded me of something I had forgotten. When we first met, I had told her that I believed one mistake could destroy everything. She told me she had spent years learning the opposite. A mistake could reveal where a system was broken. The question wasn't whether I had failed. The question was whether I would learn from it. She didn't fire me. Instead, she asked me to redesign the approval process that had allowed the error to happen. I spent 3 weeks rebuilding it. The new system prevented similar mistakes across the entire company. That experience changed the way I saw Vivian. But it also changed the way she saw me. We stopped being boss and employee in the emotional sense. We became two people who had accidentally discovered that fear could make good people judge each other unfairly. A year after the cafe incident, Vivian called another company-wide meeting. I walked into the conference room and saw her standing at the head of the same table. This time, I wasn't afraid. She announced that Belmont and Pierce had reached its strongest financial position in more than a decade. Then she announced something unexpected. She was promoting me to operations director. I was stunned. But before I could respond, she told the entire room that she had chosen me because I had made one of the worst first impressions imaginable and then spent a year proving that character wasn't measured by a bad moment. Everyone laughed. Even me. After the meeting, Vivian and I returned to the cafe where we had first met. We sat at the same table. She ordered coffee. I told her I still couldn't believe she had listened to me complain about her for 20 minutes without revealing who she was. She smiled and said that sometimes the truth was easier to hear from someone who didn't know they were speaking to the person who needed to hear it. Then she asked me whether I still thought she was a nightmare. I told her honestly that she could still be terrifying before breakfast. She laughed. And for the first time, I realized how far we had both come. I had entered that cafe believing my new boss was my enemy. She had entered it knowing that I didn't trust her. Neither of us had been completely right. Neither of us had been completely wrong. We had simply been human. Years later, when people asked me how I became an executive, I never told them the story began with a promotion. I told them it began with embarrassment. It began with a stranger listening to me complain. It began with a woman who could have punished me choosing instead to understand me. And it began with a lesson I still carry every day: never decide who someone is before giving them the chance to show you. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. And before you leave, tell us in the comments, have you ever judged someone too quickly, only to discover later that their story was completely different from what you believed? Because sometimes the person we fear is not the person who will hurt us. Sometimes they are the person who teaches us how wrong we were. And sometimes, the most powerful second chance begins with 3 simple words: I was wrong about you.